Hey everyone! Welcome back! I am back today with more Steel Ball Run manga reviews, you guys. Oh my goodness. Chapter 66 through 70 today. I'd say they're gonna be bizarre, but you know what? I feel like at this point it's just redundant. It's just redundant to talk about how bizarre it's gonna be or how action-packed it's gonna be or how much is... Every single chapter is like that. Every single chapter is like something going to heck, something going to crap, big stuff happening, monumental, weird, creepy, scary, amazing, beautiful. I think you get the idea. So yeah, guys, we where we left off last time, it was like the smack dab in the middle of like another what is happening kind of thing. Only this is a little bit more like what is happening, I feel like, than usual. And there was a reason for that. So I will get into it. Before I get started, I do just want to say if you're joining me early today, you know just what that means. It means you are one of my awesome patrons. Thank you so very much. And as always, I am sending up those big old hugs right through that screen. And if not, still, thank you for joining me today. I'm glad you're here. I do hope you'll consider supporting me that way. The link to my Patreon is going to be in the description down below. And if you're joining me on the YouTubes, I really hope you'll hit like and subscribe for me. It helps me and my channel so much. So thank you in advance for that. So yeah, guys, we had a pretty action-packed one last time. You know, where we left off, we've got all this weird stuff going on. We're in Philadelphia, and we've got all this weird stuff going on. Johnny got shot. I say that like Johnny has not gotten shot, like machine gun shot full of holes, like at least 5 or 6 times in the past. Like that's, I don't know how they're surviving. Like, I know that like hot pants helped, but like this is just something that like came up the other day too. Like, how the heck are they surviving? And I feel like Phantom Blood kind of has similar rules. Like until we developed like, you know, stands where like we actually have like healing stands and stuff like that. I feel like there was this time in JoJo's where it's just like, okay, this is a really horrible wound and we're moving on. We're moving on. They're fine. Don't worry about it. It's a mere flesh wound. Anywho, yeah, so where we left off last time, Johnny, had gotten shot. He managed to get into the sewer and get away, but it was this mysterious person, shadowy figure. He seemed like he knew them, and there was just a whole bunch of weird stuff going on. Like now, looking back on it now, I can see how like my initial, and I think I even said this, like my initial kind of reactions to all of it were, it feels like this isn't really happening. It feels like Johnny is seeing someone behind Gyro, and Gyro doesn't see it. It feels like all these people are in the same place, yet they're not really there. And that's kind of, I was like, is it an illusion thing? Like, what's going on? So it's about to make a whole lot more sense. Just spoiler alert, we're going to get into it. So yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot more to say about last time or a ton of, you know. So since we left off literally in the middle of a fight last time, I think I will just get right into it. So we're kicking off with chapter, 66, right? 67. Yeah, okay. Because I keep all the notes in like one file, so, you know, I could just be like telling you about chapter we already read. Or like, well, that one time I almost skipped a chapter. Not a good thing to do when you have so much going on in the chapter. So, all right, guys, kicking off chapter 66. So Gyro's in the middle of fighting Chocolate Disco. Actually, the stand is Chocolate Disco. The name is Disco. The name of the person. And I just gotta say, if his name can be Disco and his stand is Chocolate Disco, I think that's a good case for me to have a stand called Sweet Melissa. I know that it has my name in it, but it's kind of the same thing as Chocolate Disco when you think about it. I don't know. I'm putting it out there. I think if I was going to have a stand, I think that makes sense. It's a pop culture, musical, classic rock reference. And it's actually a song I was named after. So I'm just putting it out there for the committee of JoJo experts to ponder. Let me know what you think. Okay, so we're in the middle of this fight. Gyro is thinking to himself, like, how this guy is kind of invincible, which I'm like, yeah, I just, you know, I don't doubt he's powerful, but, like, after all I've seen Gyro and Johnny overcome, I'm like, yeah, sweetheart, no. I think he's way, way less than invincible. So, Disco says his stand name, and he's like, that is all. Like, very formal. And he starts to do his thing. The bottle he was holding had, like, the skull on it and everything breaks. And Gyro tries to run, but a nail gets in his leg, a big old nail. Really, really gross. So Gyro tries to throw his steel balls, but Disco presses one of the buttons on his little thing and deflects it. And Gyro gets hit in the face. So Disco starts messing with the bottle again, but we see Gyro readying a ball. So the bottle breaks again, and we see, instead of something happening, we see Gyro walking towards him, menacing as heck. And Disco starts to freak out, and he's like, he's trying to press all his little buttons and everything. But Gyro mentions that he really has to thank his ancestors for this whole steel ball thing, because the balls he threw earlier gathered air around them. Okay, wrap your brain around this, okay? The balls he threw earlier gathered air around them and started refracting light, which created a sort of distorted lens through which Disco is now seeing Gyro, which is why none of Disco's attacks can land, because he can't really see what he's doing. And I was just like, is there anything the balls can't do? Can we just review what the balls can do? Like, the balls can make you younger. There's all the stuff the balls can do. Remember when he, like, what did he do? He actually, like, made like a little bridge out of them one time. He made like a little bridge using the steel balls. I mean, is there really anything they can't do? Like, you could do literally anything. You can gather air and refract light and make your opponent not be able to see what they're doing. Like, the balls, if you know how to... I'm so glad my window's not open right now. It's raining out, so yeah, my window's not open, and my neighbors don't have to hear me going on about how amazing the balls are. Oh God, I hope no one ever, like, just clips or stitches or any of this out of context. I'll be very, very embarrassed. Anyway, they're pretty amazing. So he does this amazing thing. He's menacing. He knows he's got the upper hand. Disco just pulls a gun on him. Like, I was thinking the same thing that Gyro was about to say. Gyro's like, he was actually, I feel like, kind of like, are you seriously pulling a gun on me right now? I don't have it in my notes, but I feel like he actually says, like, really, a gun? And I was thinking the same thing, because I'm like, wow. So Gyro says this really I don't know what to make of this line. Let me know how you interpret this line, because I'm still just kind of standing here scratching my head, like, what does that even mean? He's like, I should save this for my girlfriend, but the lens doesn't show that we're a lot closer to each other than you think. And I was just like, huh? I see that he's trying to say something about being close, so maybe that has something to do with a girlfriend, but, like, honestly, the first thing I thought was of, like, the thing that the little sticker on your rear view mirrors on your car that says, like, objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. Like, a girlfriend was not where I went first in my head with But apparently, so for those of you out there who want to know what it's like in a relationship with Gyro Zeppeli, there you go. There you go. Little peek into that world. Yeah, I love Gyro so much. I think being his girlfriend would be quite an experience. Like, all the way around. I'm sure it would be wildly fun, and it will also just be wildly wild. Just... like, what are you even saying? I was just kind of, maybe somebody out there is going to be like, oh my God, I read between the lines, and I can tell you exactly what he meant, but I'm just kind of here scratching my head about what that has to do with a girlfriend. I don't know. Only Gyro knows, apparently. So, Gyro is right up on this guy with the ball, gets his shoulder, grabs him from behind, and puts the ball up to his throat. I mean, he's so got the upper hand here. So Gyro's trying to get info out of him on like who shot Johnny, but finally Gyro decides this guy doesn't know anything. He just knocks him out, and we see the little like out of commission box. I'm like, yeah, sure, like retired, out of commission. We have a bunch of like cute little phrases that we use for people who just got their butts handed to them basically and are just no longer viable as fighters in this whole part. Well, maybe not in the whole part. I don't know, because we have Magenta come back for a little bit. Every once in a while they pop back up again. Okay, so he goes to where Johnny was shot. He sees the blood, and he figures out that Johnny must have escaped through the drain. Gyro tries to go confront the kids that were playing in the park, right? Because this all happened right outside the park. And at first they're like scared of him a little bit, which I could see, we know how he is with kids. Sometimes with kids he comes down a little. He's, he doesn't take a gentle approach when he's on a mission, regardless of who it is. Let's just put it that way. But he pulls out a picture of Dio and he starts asking him like, hey, did you see who shot my friend? Was this the guy who did it? And some of the kids shake their head and they're like, yeah. And he's like, I freaking knew it. Then 2 little girls come out and they're like, no, that's not who did it. It's the man in your other picture. And he's like, other picture? And he looks down and it's like sticking out somewhere is a picture of Wekapipo. And I'm like, yeah, what? So many questions at this point. So the kids start arguing. Like each group insists on what they saw. And Gyro finally asks how many men were there. Like how many people were there at the scene of the crime. And each group says like there was only one. There was only one shooter. So he holds up both pictures again. Gets the same answers from the kids over again. The girls are swearing it's Wekapipo. The boys swear it's Dio. So the kids keep arguing, and Gyro's like, what is wrong with these kids? Like, it doesn't make any sense for them to, like, lie or be enemies or anything, but, like, so clearly, like, something is wrong here. So he's thinking, like, did Dio disguise himself as Wekapipo? And, like, he's like, no, that can't be it. Maybe an illusion. And I'm like, I was on the illusion train this whole, like, I'm like, it's got to be an illusion. Like, if it's Valentine's stand, is it like an illusion thing? If it's somebody else's stand, like, are we doing illusions? That was what made the most sense to me. So then as if this isn't complicated enough, a man comes out and says, both groups of kids are wrong. He saw who really shot Johnny. So he's an artist, and apparently he sketched a picture of the shooter, and it's Valentine. And I'm like, finally, something that makes sense. Because if this is Valentine's stand, then, like, that actually makes a lot of sense. So the kids are like, are you crazy? That's the president. And Gyro's like, hold up. Did someone say president? So that kind of piqued his interest. So we cut to Dio and Wekapipo are talking, and Dio says, Johnny is better left alive. Wekapipo questions that Dio knew that Magenta was still alive, and he didn't say anything. And Dio's just like, oh, that's weird. I thought you two got along. Well, whatever. All according to plan, right? Finn. I've never slapped a Finn before. I've never slapped when I've done, but I'm going to do it this time because Finn. Yeah, guys. So at this point, I was honestly left way more confused than anything else. We ended the fight with Chocolate Disco in this one. A really good name, by the way, Chocolate Disco. Like, it's got to be like somebody let me know. It's like a pop culture. It's like a musical reference or something, right? I'm not familiar with what it is, but that's got to be a band name, right? Because that's just way too good to not be a band name. Anyway, like, yeah, Chocolate Disco being invincible was pretty laughable, actually. Although I gotta say, had Gyro not known what to do to, like, impair his vision, it was effective, However, if all you have to do is get him to not see clearly and not be able to land attacks, which I guess you could say that with any stand, really, because I even remember, like, way back in Stardust Crusaders, we had the, Oh, I can't believe I'm not remembering the name of it. The doll. The doll that was supposed to be like based on... What was it? Okay, this is going to bother me. Hang on. Let me see what the name of this doll stand... Jojo. Was this it? Ebony Devil? Yeah, that sounds familiar. Okay, so I guess that's it. I don't know. I'm getting like a bunch of different pictures showing up, but yes. So anyway, sorry, had to hijack this for a second just to go look that up. But do you remember how like Silver Chariot couldn't attack because like Polnareff couldn't see? So like I feel like it's not the first instance of like, hey, if you literally take away somebody's ability to see what they're doing, they're not going to be able to use their stand effectively. But it's still kind of like, it still kind of feels like it's not super invincible to me, but it's a cool idea. It was still a powerful stand, I think, in a lot of ways. Great name, but yeah, Gyro just totally wrecked. So, I mean, Gyro using the balls that way too is just, it never ceases to amaze me. How he uses them and how much they can really do. And it's like, I know that his dad was like, we never use them for combat, but like, good God, there's so many ways you can use them. So many ways. And, you know, I think one thing that I was thinking when Johnny got the ability to like move like in infinity, I remember thinking like, okay, now they got to level up Gyro too, because there's no way that like we can have, you know, Johnny doing something so OP, but Gyro kind of being his teacher, like not, of course, obviously Johnny's like the main Jojo and everything. He's going to have like the most OP power, I guess, and everything. But I feel like I was kind of waiting for them to level up Gyro. And honestly, like Gyro doesn't need any leveling up. Gyro, like up here is all a ball and up here is all he needs. And it's like the sky's the limit. So that was just really, really cool. Like I said, after this one, I was way more confused than clarified on anything that was actually going on with Johnny. All we know is that we saw someone shoot Johnny. We didn't see who it was. He seemed like he knew them, which would be the case with any one of those three people that just got accused. Wekapipo, Dio, and Valentine. Because, like, he would know the president, you know? And he had, so he would definitely know him. But at this point, we have, like, more questions than answers. So all I can say is once they start to explain what's actually going on, it's actually really, really cool. And I will tell you what I was thinking along the way and how I almost kind of sort of guessed it. And I'm proud of myself because that never happens. All right. So that one was a pretty, I feel like, cut and dry kind of, you know, chapter. So we're going to move right on to chapter 67. Okay. Now we're really getting into it. I mean, we've been into it, but we're going to start off with a flashback on this one, you guys. And the narrator of the flashback is citing the first chapter of John from the Bible. Only in the translation I read, they changed the world became life to the word became life to the world became life. And I don't know if that was like the translation that I read or if it was purposely changed. Or if it's a reference to Zawoldo, I don't know. But I mean, I looked up the actual scripture and I'm like, yeah, other than that, it's like, it's word for word. Like it's actually citing the actual scripture. So they show Jesus and how he's crucified for everyone. And they go into how, you know, this seems impossible, but he was resurrected 3 days later. And I was like, oh, okay. Because like initially reading this, when we were reading about the corpse parts and everything, I was kind of like, I didn't want to be that person that was like, you know, we came back from the dead, right? Like, you know that's not correct, right? That like, you know, because many know the story of how like Jesus died on the cross, and you know, if you're familiar with Easter or anything surrounding it, you may know that kind of the premise for that is that he came back from the dead 3 days later. And I kind of just thought that, like, Araki was not going with the resurrection. Like, I just thought he was just, okay, like, that's kind of how it came off, right? Like, that's kind of how it seemed. I just noticed there's, oh, good. I was going to say, I just noticed there's, like, a tear in my chair. But it's not. It's just a stitching. Never mind. We're good. So, yeah. No, apparently we are going with the actual, like, resurrection story. So this really piqued my interest because I'm like, wait, if he was resurrected, then how are you doing the corpse parts? Well, put a pin in that. So we see Jesus. He thanks Joseph of Arimathea for treating his body well after he died. And then he leaves and he's like, I'm going to head east. And I'm like, oh, okay. So Joseph asks if he'll ever see him again, and Jesus replies that everything is circular and rotates. And I'm like, oh my God, Jesus, was that a Jojo reference? because of the whole, like, golden rotation thing. And so he shows him a map with 9 locations written in sand. And then he just vanishes into the light. So we find out that, according to the narrator, Jesus traveled around the world, learning the language and customs of the people he stayed with, who ended up really admiring him. So the last people he's seen with look to be Native Americans. So I think we're to infer that he was last in America, or what would become America. By this time, a lot of time had passed, and he actually, like, died. And there was an earthquake. And I thought this was interesting because, like, there was also an earthquake at the crucifixion. So I'm like, oh, is he, like, referencing that a little bit, that there was another earthquake? So this earthquake supposedly tore his body into 9 pieces, but the pieces never rotted. They were found and carried by animals or spread apart by weather. And finally, we get to years later when a soldier finds the heart in San Diego. So guess who that was? And he was the only one to make it back alive from this whole party. We knew this from his original backstory and everything. But this is when he realizes that the other parts need to be found. So he rose to power, became president. The rest is history. And we cut to present day, where Wekapipo is in Philadelphia and spots Johnny and Gyro a little earlier than what we had last seen. So we're back at 1605 that day, which I think is 13, 14, 15, 4:05 in the afternoon, I guess. And he mentions that, like, they really should have tried to use the race to try to get the eye from Dio, because now that they're out in the open, Valentine's definitely going to find him. He's definitely going to kill them. So Wekapipo is trying to decide, like, who to ally himself with, basically. And he says, like, I'm not going to choose the losing side again. If I'm going to defeat the president, like, I'm going to have to go with Dio. And I'm like, initially, I remember thinking, like, that's a shame. I really wish he had chose Johnny and Gyro. I know he thinks they don't have a chance, but I feel like he kind of, even at that time, I felt like he kind of chose wrong. And I would like you to put a pin in that, big old pin in it, for later. And that's all I'm going to say. So we see him actually, like, passing Disco, and he almost sort of bumps into him. So all this is happening at once. We're getting to see what we're basically going to be seeing over the next 2 chapters is the events that it's going to be kind of I don't want to say it's going to be like Thursday, July 15th, because I feel like that was still at, like, different times. What we're seeing here is we're going to see what everyone was doing at, like, the same time of the day, like, from everyone's perspective. So he's looking for Dio, and he sees a gun pointed at him from beneath one of the walls, and he readies one of his balls. So then he realizes the gun was just laying there and it must be a trap. And he's like, who did this? And we see the same shadowy figure emerge from behind the American flag, right behind him. So the figure goes after him, like, still half wrapped in the flag, but we can see that, because we've seen Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, The Stand, or as they're calling it here, D4C, which is a much easier way to say it. So we see D4C's hand is actually the one going in for the swing. So we can kind of tell at this point, okay, the shadowy figure has got to be Valentine, which was a good, I think, guess in the first place. We got the American flag, you know. So now we kind of have more or less confirmation, but we just don't know like how this all happened. So Wekapipo uses his ball and gives him left side ataxia, grabs the gun, and he starts to shoot. So he hits the shadowy figure dead on in the head, also in the wrist, the stomach, everything, only to find that it's actually Johnny laying there shot. And that's when I was like, wait, clearly that was, but we saw that it was the stand, and went, how is that Johnny? And how is it, again, a lot of questions. So I'm thinking that's why Johnny was like, why are you here? And so we see that Johnny starts to try and use Tusk, and Wekapipo shoots again because he thinks that Johnny's actually attacking him and was like the one attacking him. So Johnny escapes into the sewer grate, which we knew. And he sees Johnny move his legs as he slides down into the sewer. So next we see that the little girls so basically I had here in my notes that we see that the little girls that Gyro talked to actually did see Wekapipo as he was trying to get away. And so they were telling the truth. So yeah, basically like their story's corroborated at this point, but we still have no idea like how this is happening. So Wekapipo is trying to figure it all out, and that's when Dio shows up, and they start having the conversation that we saw at the end of the last chapter, where he's like, oh, I thought you and Magenta got along, blah, blah, blah. And then we have like this little cutaway where we see a bunch of our characters, and we see Independence Hall, and we see that like the whole scene is menacing. I don't know. I don't think it's super important. I just included it because it was cool. So we flash back to 1605 again, but this time we're doing it from Dio's point of view. So we're kind of seeing like the same thing through everyone's point of view. We see that he's looking at a picture of Scarlet and thinking to himself how Lucy is posing as her. Magenta told him, if you remember from a few chapters back. But Dio's like, as long as I'm the only one who knows, I'm good. He's not good, and he's not the only one who knows. As we know, because now like everyone knows. Well, Johnny and Gyro still don't know, right? Yeah, no. Or do they at this point? I forgot. I'm trying to remember. I lost track of when they last saw Wekapipo. But anyway, even if they know, like, it doesn't matter because basically Dio's screwed. Because remember, like, that was the only thing that he really had, like, a lot of leverage on, right? Was the whole, like, Lucy thing. And now his eye, and now they've got to, we know they've got to be after the eye now. Because it's the only part that's left. So, he mentions that the president's security is really good. It's going to be, like, cracking down on him. And just as he's thinking, a guard starts to come up behind him, and Dio just, like, dinos out on him. He takes his clothes, he merges him with, like, the roots of a nearby tree, and then dinofies him, like, makes him, which I didn't know that Dio could do, but I will just throw that on the list of things he can do. He can merge people with tree roots, and then turn them into, we knew he could turn people into dinosaurs, but, like, the tree root thing kind of threw me. So he figures out that the corpse must be complete, and he sees Valentine. Also, I just have in my notes that, like, Diego is looking so fine in this soldier getup, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna regret saying it even more later on for reasons you'll see, but I have to get it out there that, like, I don't think he's ever drawn Diego where he's not dinofied, where he hasn't just been, like, steaming up the screen. I don't know. I think just in part 6, Araki got really used to just, like, drawing Dio as, like, super fine. And he just carried on the tradition of this. Because, like, every time we see Dio, he's like, he's got like the bedroom eyes. He's got, I don't know. I just had to point it out because I'm a simp, and what can I say?
Go to horny jail.
He's walking alone, no bodyguards. This is my chance, right? That's what Dio's thinking. Finn to chapter 67. I didn't skip a chapter, right? No, because we did 65 last time. Yeah. I'm like, wait, I wasn't supposed to do like 65 through 70. No, it's always 66 through, yeah. Okay. So, but next time, okay, so next time I'll interject this really quick here before I do my little talk about chapter 67. Next time I'm going to be doing 6 chapters, and that was recommended to me because there's going to be a big fight going on that really resolves and wraps up very nicely with chapter 76. So instead of doing, so instead of doing 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, I'm going to be doing that plus 76. Math is hard. I'm having a hard time mathing today. That's like, I legitimately was like, oh my God, I just skipped like the first chapter. Anyway, chapter 67. Okay, you guys. So in this one, we start to be able to see, well, first of all, we start off with that bombshell about Jesus, right? Because we find out that, like I said, like I had always kind of assumed he just was not going with the resurrection. I'll tell you why this changes it a little bit, for me anyway. First of all, we have it a little bit closer to, I mean, it's just, I don't know if we can really say how biblically accurate any of this is, because as soon as you have Lucy being pregnant with the head, and as soon as you have, like, you know, I would say we have interpreted this uniquely. However, I think that including the resurrection does kind of make it feel like what many who know the story of Jesus know as canon for that, okay, if you want. So the other thing about it is, I think that's a really important statement for Araki, because we know if there's one thing this man does not F with, it's death. Like death, he's made a pretty good point of like, you know, Stance can do almost anything, but you really can't undo dead. You know, like a Sand cannot do that. Anytime we've seen dead undone, it's been they weren't really dead. Someone told them to come back from the dead. They were or like a really unique situation, like the whole Joseph thing at the end of part 3. Like very unique circumstances, you know. So I mean, like the fact that he would do that tells me, okay, this is how. And I feel like this is something we've been building up the whole part, and it's also something they'll get into a little bit more in these next chapters. We've really built up at this point that like this whole situation surrounding the corpse is like very, 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 very important. It's very special. It's very, you know, and I think that there's something about him actually including like a resurrection that makes it, for his writing style, it sets it apart, because we know that like coming back from the dead is not, so he doesn't like take advantage of that the way that they do in most like sci-fi and fantasy and other, you know, dead is dead. So I think that kind of like, for me, it shows me a little bit, I don't know if I'm describing this correctly, but like for his writing direction, that kind of shows the weight, the importance of this whole situation, that he'd be willing to include like a resurrection in his story. So we also see that, okay, we actually get a little bit of like a clue of like how the whole body scattering thing actually happens. You know, it happened with this earthquake. It happened after Jesus went around and was like, probably like, I don't know, he was a traveler or teacher. I don't know. They didn't really say that he taught, but like I could see it because he was going around doing that like before. But yeah, he traveled around, he learned the ways and the customs and everything, and like, and people were like they actually show some of the people he was with, like, we want to see you again, like, are we going to see you again? It's, so yeah, so you know that he made a big impression. So this kind of like clues in, okay, this like, we have a point A to point B now, you know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting. And honestly, after all this time, I kind of thought we were just not really going to be like revisiting like a lot of like, it's like, okay, well, it's Jesus, it's this, it's then, and we're off, you know, like I didn't think we were going to be spending a lot of time on that. So it was cool. It was cool that we got that little more detailed explanation. And we also got a little bit more, I mean, I wouldn't say it added a lot of details to how Valentine found the heart. We already knew like he was the only one left in his party, and he found the heart and he rose to power. And that's like been it's been like the driving force behind everything. I'm sorry, I'm spinning the little steel ball again because I like it and it's good. And you can't stop me. But yes, so we did get a little bit more background there. We start to see a little bit of what's going on in this chapter, because as soon as I saw that the shadowy figure was there 1 minute and trying to attack Wekapipo, and it was clearly to me, clear as day, looked like D4C's hand. And then all of a sudden it was actually Johnny. First thing I thought, because we know that JoJo villains typically have like a time-related stand power, or ultimately they have a time-related stand power. If this was going to be something with time, my first thought was, is he switching out someone's position in one timeline to another? So for example, it's 1605 and Speedwagon is here. We're just gonna use Speedwagon as an example, okay? But if I take from another timeline, who should I take? Joseph. And now I use my stand ability, which can, at this point in time, I didn't know what it was. They will explain it by the end. Okay? So that's what I'm picturing. And I gotta be honest with you. Oh, I won't say it. I won't say it. I'll wait. But put a pin in that. It's another thing to we've got a lot of pins going at this point, okay? So, yeah. Wekapipo siding with Dio, I have my feelings on again. Okay, we'll circle back around to that. Don't you worry. We're gonna get back to that. Ooh, we'll get back to that. But this was like the first kind of like, we're starting to see clues. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna spend a super lot of time on that because we have so much going on in these chapters. So I'm gonna move right on to chapter 68. Oh, did I just move my camera? No. Okay, I hit one of my cords with my foot. All right, so chapter 68, Dio follows Valentine back and sees that Lucy is being rolled around on a stretcher, which, like, first off, dear God, what is happening to this girl? Like, is this the birth? Are they just, like, wheeling her around? And so, like, what is happening? Because we have not seen her since the whole, like, pregnancy thing. And I'm just like, somebody tell me this poor girl's okay. Like, is she even alive? Like, I imagine they're working really hard to keep her alive and keep her well because he needs that birthed for himself, right? Valentine does. But I'm just like, that scared the crap out of me. So anyway, Dio sees this and he figures out, okay, they know about Lucy being Scarlet for a time, blah, blah, blah. So that's when, and I'm just like, I'm scared for Dio at this point because I'm just like, I don't think you realize that, like, you don't hold the cards here as much as you think you do. And I'm just like, I was worried for him. So some of the other guards start hassling Dio. They're saying, like, you should be stationed outside because don't forget he's still dressed he's dressed in his smoking guard costume. So and the guards are hassling him and they're like, we should be on the lookout for these people. And he hands pictures of Johnny, Gyro, and Dio to Dio. And I'm just like, ah! It's like one of those things where you see somebody like standing right in front of their own wanted poster. And it's so Dio starts sniffing and he realizes that Valentine went outside without any guards. So he has some of his little dinos take care of the guards that are hassling him and he takes off. He's like, now's my chance, right? So he's thinking about how the Lucy thing is out in the open. The whole corpse is there, minus the eye that Dio has. And he's like, I've got to take him out now. So Dio thinks it's too dangerous to approach Valentine without really knowing what his stand is, which is a good call. So he plans to use Wekapipo to get to Valentine. So, and then we see Dio also just rides right on past Disco on his horse. And I'm just like, okay, so this is all happening simultaneously. And I kind of love it. I kind of love that we're doing the like meanwhile thing. Hi, baby. Buffy's here. Buffy's decided to join in on the review and weigh in on her thoughts about Steel Ball Red today. So look forward to that. Okay, so Dio sniffs out the place where we know that Johnny is about to be shot, right? Like that little, I don't know if it's like an alley or what. It's kind of like an alley. He smells that Valentine is there and that Wekapipo is also trailing behind him, behind Dio. So he dinos out and scales the building so that he can watch what happens when Wekapipo encounters Valentine, because he's like, I'm going to learn the secret of his stand ability. So, I know, baby. So, he sees Wekapipo with a gun, but he's like, where did Valentine go? So that's when Wekapipo turns up towards Dio on the roof and starts shooting. Now, I'll tell you what stood out to me is weird about this. When we saw Wekapipo last time, he never looked up and shot. But you know who did look up and shoot? When in the original version of all this, remember me saying it? Johnny. Johnny looked up and shot with Tusk. And I was really hoping that something would fall on this person who was attacking Johnny at that time. That's why I remembered it. Because I'm like, what? So, Dio just launches at Wekapipo to attack him, but gets a ball thrown at him and then gets left side ataxia. So Dio grabs the gun, shoots Wekapipo in the head, the flag falls on Dio, and the next thing he knows, Wekapipo is rounding the corner behind him, and guess what? Johnny is the one shot in front of him. So, second instance of somebody being like, shooting at a totally different person, and it ends up being Johnny. And I'm like, how many freaking people shot at this poor boy? Like, everyone shot Johnny, apparently. Oh, I ran Buffy off. Okay. So, and Johnny says again, like, how? Which also makes sense, because he knows Dio, right? So, Dio's just like, I shot Johnny, what? And he also, and Dio also sees the legs moving as he gets away. Like, everyone notes that, like, the legs have moved. Like, that's a big thing. So I put it in all my notes. So I'm like, everyone has noted that his legs have moved. We see that the boys actually did see Dio doing this, so they also told the truth. So, I already said this. At this point, my best theory is that Valentine's stand can alter time by making a certain aspect of a certain time appear in another time. Remember that. So Wekapipo is freaking out the way that we saw him doing last chapter, because he also just saw himself shoot Johnny. Meanwhile, Dio can still smell Valentine and figures out that he must have known that he was disguised as a guard, and he lured him there. So Dio feels like he's put together what his stand does at this point, like in his head, and that Valentine must have lured him there to kill Johnny, but also probably for another reason that he's not sure about. And I'm like, probably for the eye, right? Like, that would be the obvious answer, is like, he probably wants that eye. Because I said, like, a couple chapters ago, Dio's about to be the most, like, sought-after person. Because he's got the so think about it, because our side wouldn't want him to get that, because then Valentine completes it, and Valentine would want to get it to complete the corpse. So yeah, he's about to be real popular. So Dio and Wekapipo are now having the same conversation we've seen him have twice now, and Dio asks, hey, so did you see me shoot Johnny? Just like really casually. To which Wekapipo is now even more confused. Because don't forget, Wekapipo just himself, as he sees it, shot Johnny. And he's like, I need to know for sure. We don't have much time. I definitely just shot Johnny, only I didn't. Like, did you see it? And I'm like, okay, Dio is starting to put something together, isn't he? So Wekapipo's like, I don't understand a word you are trying to say. I don't know. Dio explains that the one who shot Johnny was actually the president. He can tell from the scent. So that's like one advantage that Dio has here is he can actually smell what's going on. He doesn't have to rely on what he's seeing in front of him, even though he knows what he just saw. So Dio explains that, yes, I already said that. Dio can sense that he's near. He sends out the dinos because Valentine might be invisible. And he tells Wekapipo he wants the left eye. And Wekapipo can't believe that the whole corpse is almost assembled at this point. So Wekapipo and Dio are arguing now because Dio needs to know exactly how Valentine's stand works before he does anything else. When they see one of the dinos totally trashed and falling down on the ground, which I was sad about because the little dinos are kind of cute. And there's someone walking past when all the dinos are killed. And Dio's like, did the president like transfigure himself or something? Like what? Well, you know, like, is it another illusion thing? Everyone jumps to illusion first, right? Because that's kind of the simplest answer. So he sees more dinos getting killed, and he's like, no, it's definitely not the civilian that just walked by. He sees his raptors going between two buildings and figures out that that must be where Valentine is. So he tells Wekapipo to go and attack. And Wekapipo is just so confused right now because he thinks that he's the one who shot Johnny, not Dio, and he's still like reeling from it. So Dio explains again that it's Valentine who did it. He sees more of his dinos disappearing, and then he sees him, Valentine, with D4C fully called out and ready to go. Valentine goes to attack Dio, but Wekapipo hits him with the ball, and the ball goes right through Valentine's head. Fin to chapter 68. So, okay, so this one, again, we have a lot more taking shape here. We can see that Dio is really starting to put together what's going on. They don't tell us what's going on, but I think we have enough at this point to start to speculate. And I already told you, like, what my theory was at this point in time. So at this point, like, everyone has shot poor Johnny. Like, like, who hasn't shot Johnny at this point? So yeah. So again, it's looking really good for that whole, like, especially since we've seen now, like we saw in this one, that we actually saw Wekapipo looking up, but that was actually Johnny in the original version. And, like, we can see how, like, okay, people are just being, like, replaced. Almost like at their points in time where, like, it's a little bit complex and, like, it'll be better explained later. But so yeah, so at this point we see Dio. We know that Dio's just got, like, that hunger, that desperation to, like, get to Valentine and get this taken care of. And, like, at this point in time, I was not on Dio's side because, honestly, like, A, that helps us. B, he's looking pretty good here, you guys. I know. But he is. And finally, you know, at this point, I mean, he did already say he was gonna, like, see what happened with Wekapipo and Valentine to almost kind of, like, use Wekapipo. So we already know, like, it's not looking great for, like, an alliance or anything. Like, at least not, like, where Dio's gonna be loyal or anything. But at this point, I was still, like, kind of half rooting for him. And when I tell you they took me so high here and then just dropped me so low with Diego, I've been pretty upset about Diego ever since the end of this batch, and you're gonna see why. But yeah, so we have two instances now where Johnny got shot, and we're starting to be able to see, like, we definitely know it's Valentine, and we're starting to be able to see, like, okay, clearly this is an instance of, if it's not illusion, then it's literally, like, reality being replaced with other reality is the only way I can think to put it. So I don't know if I have a whole lot more to say. We got to see D4C like in all his glory here. We had seen him before, but this time we got like just a really nice shot of like them together. Just a nice little something for the trailers, you guys. And I don't think there's a whole lot more to say than that, in terms of like what happened in this one. Just like we're finally, I think, starting to be able to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together. I think Dio's seeing that he doesn't have it. Like basically that eye is all, it's the only thing kind of keeping him, I feel like the only thing keeping him alive at this point. But I don't know. I don't even know how to feel about Diego after this whole batch. And again, you will see why. So, like, I kind of want to hope he's not going to die, but just wait for it. So, all right. That's pretty much all I have for Chapter 68. Chapter 69, because these last two are going to be big chapters. All right. Chapter 69, Wekapipo is thinking that there's nowhere left for him on this earth. He should just be happy to be able to serve a greater good, and he's thinking on his past. And he thinks about Lucy, saying that, like, he's done all this for this young girl he's never met. He's made an enemy of this country for that reason. And I'm not sure if that was what was happening in current time or if that's something from the future now that I now that I've read it. So just keep that in mind for later. But so we cut to Dio. He's like, what is this guy? This is definitely not just vanishing. We see like these square holes throughout Valentine's face. And he calls out his stand. And he actually says, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. And so now you got to wonder if in this universe, if AC/DC got the name of the song from Valentine. And I know that's something we wonder about from time to time. And Jojo's like, when we see that like Kira has Killer Queen, is anyone thinking like, oh, I love that song? Yeah. Because it makes enough sense when it happens like before, like in Phantom Blood and everything, and in Battle Tennessee. Obviously, it's before all these classic rock bands came out. But like when you have like a stand later where like the actual song would have been out, is it named for the song? Or like, but in this case, I would just assume that like the band, the song was named for the stand. Which don't overthink it. It's one of those things like, don't overthink it. It's just a fun little thing that Araki puts in there. You're not supposed to overthink it. But if you did overthink it, it will probably make your brain overheat. So, Valentine attacks Dio, but Dio grabs his jaw and starts to wreck him. Then Valentine vanishes, and Dio's like, what? He was definitely here. What? So Wekapipo screams because Valentine starts emerging out of Dio. Is the only way I can think to put it. He is literally coming out of him. So he calls out his stand again and wails on Dio, but Wekapipo throws a ball and gives him left side ataxia. So Dio's like, hey, thanks, I'll take care of the rest, and he dinos out. So Dio starts to wreck him, and Valentine grabs for the flag, and he vanishes again. So Dio's thinking, okay, he's got to be under this flag, and he wants to see what's really going on with his stand ability before he can, before Valentine gets the left side taken care of again, before it wears off. So he lifts the flag, and Valentine is merged with the flag on the underneath of it, and I'm just like, what is going on with the merging? What is happening? So Dio actually rees and tries to swipe at him, and Valentine just vanishes again. So then we see Valentine's hand reaches out and grabs Dio into the flag. And that's when we see that there's two Valentines in one, literally one emerging from the other. And now there are two Dios. So he calls the stand again, and he tells Dio that he'll let him enter this side, but only half of his body. And I'm like, oh my God, we're doing another dimension or so. We're doing another dimension. This has all been other dimensional stuff. So he merges his hand into Dio's face, and the corpse eye starts coming out of Dio's face. And Valentine's like, what do you think is going to happen when you meet the other you? And I'm just like, time travel and other dimensional sci-fi and everything I've been watching my whole life has taught me anything, is it's not going to be good to get these two together. So sure enough, the half of Dio's body starts getting wrecked and spurting blood, and we get another flashback, this time around 1610, so about 5 minutes after all the other ones started, and this one is from Valentine's point of view. So he sees Dio coming on the horse, realizes that he's coming after him, and he merges into the flag. Then we see Johnny once again trying to warn Gyro that Valentine is right behind him, and Valentine starts emerging out of one of the horses with his gun. And I'm just like, is that a reference to Phantom Blood, where we had, was it Jack the Ripper who was like coming out of the horse? And then I feel like we had when we have it again in Battle Tennessee with like something bursting out of the horse, because I remember we had the vampire horses. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but I know in Phantom Blood we definitely had somebody hiding inside of a horse, like it was a piñata, and I'm just like, what? It's got to be a reference to it, right? It's got to be an Easter egg. So yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. So Valentine shoots Johnny right in the head. Also notices that his legs move as he gets away. And we see that the artist from before actually sees Valentine do it this time. So everyone was telling the truth, basically. They all saw what they saw, and they were all right. So Valentine sees Dio and Wekapipo starting to talk, and he starts merging into the horses again. Then we see just like a whole bunch of like copy-paste Valentines, like half merged, just like coming. It's very freaky. That's when we see Wekapipo and Dio occupying the same space at the same time, both holding the smoking gun, facing Johnny, who's been shot. Last thing in here is that we learn that D4C, the ability of it is allowing neighboring worlds to exist simultaneously in the same location. Fin to chapter 69. I just want to go ahead and pat myself on the back right now, because I kind of almost sort of guessed it. So my guess was that if it's a time-related ability, you're taking someone from one part of the timeline and just kind of like, you're putting them on the same, here, I'll do it again. Here, I'll take the bigger Joseph. It'll be easier. I have so many. All I have to do is like reach this much, and there's something Jojo's in my reach. And this time it's plushies. So like basically, if it's neighboring worlds, right? So you have in one, which they're gonna get more into this, how there is like a main world. You have like Joseph is here, and then Speedwagon is just kind of like copy pasted onto the same place from like a neighboring world. So like think of this as like it's almost kind of like another dimension. It's almost kind of like we took someone from a very, very close part of the multiverse and just sort of swap them. And so what we're seeing of Valentine is he has like all these copies of himself, and I think if we were to assume at this point that those would be copies of him from neighboring worlds. So, you know, it's almost, for me, it's kind of a little bit easier to think of it as like a shadow of the world, you know, like he's just kind of like going in and sort of swapping out whatever is in that nearby world with putting it onto this main one. And that's why everyone ended up in that spot shooting at Johnny. Or at least holding the smoking gun. Because I'm pretty sure that like, yeah, we saw that like Valentine is the one who actually did it. But they were the ones left standing there because they were moved from neighboring worlds, because that's what dirty deeds done dirt cheap does. Did I tell you guys about how somebody told me about like the localization name? I might have mentioned this in the last one. And the reason I knew that there was a stand coming, I didn't know whose it was, with that name was because I don't know if I mentioned this actually. So I knew there was a stand coming that was Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Didn't know whose it was, but I know that sometime in like, I don't know if it was part 5 or 6, or I can't remember. It was a while ago. Someone in my comments said that in one of the games, we were talking about like localization of names, and somebody was saying how in one of the games they localized a stand name to like unsavory tasks completed at a reasonable rate. And I was like, I went in, I'm like, that's gotta be Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, right? And the person was like, yes, it is. So they didn't even really tell me about what else is that gonna be. It's gotta be Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. But I'm just like, I will literally die if when we get to Steel Ball Run being animated, because God willing, one day it is going to be animated, if they actually use unsavory tasks being completed at a competitive rate or whatever it was. The good thing is they call it D4C most of the time, and you can call it D4C. Like, that's not going to be a copyright issue. Like, D4C is the original, as far as I know anyway. So, all right, so the stand ability is really, really cool. I gotta say, you're gonna see more of it in this last chapter that we're gonna do, and it's a very, very cool ability. It is OP because you can basically you can move people around, you can go get copies of yourself, and now we know that, like, two people can't be, like, they can't be together in the same. If you bring someone else's copy, that person's gonna be wrecked because, like, they cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Like, two of them. Not like he can. So, now we know what really happened. We finally saw the actual perspective. I mean, I would say Johnny's was the actual perspective too, but we didn't get to really see who was doing it. So, I'm guessing Johnny just saw Valentine then. Or did he just see, or did he just, I don't know. I don't know what he saw. It looked like he just saw a shadowy figure, but I think we, the audience, were seeing the shadowy figure. We don't really know what he was seeing. Because he did say, like, oh, it's you. So I don't know. I don't know what he saw. I'm guessing he saw Valentine. And everyone saw his legs move. So, all right. Are they trying to tell me something with this? Because I said this a while back that, like, it really feels like at this point in time, what we're doing is trying to emphasize that, like, Johnny is healing. His legs are healing. It's not a media process, but, like, are they healing from the steel balls? Because Gyro said that he didn't think that was really going to be possible. And he would know because he's been using steel balls to heal people for a long time. Or at least to, like, aid in healing people. I guess it's kind of not correct to say the balls themselves actually heal people. Is he healing from that? Is he healing from all the upgrades from Tusk? Is he healing from having had corpse parts in him for so long? Because, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, we've seen other people who also have corpse parts in them, and we know that it does help them heal faster. Like, none of them have had an injury as severe as Johnny's to his spine. So it's mostly been like, oh, you get shot, and if you have a corpse part, it's going to help you heal faster. So maybe like having a corpse part in him for like an extended period of time started to heal his legs. But I don't think he has at this point, because I feel like we talked about this a while back that, like, how does he still have a stand? Because he doesn't have any of the corpse parts anymore. And my guess is, I think that Jesus actually just kind of, like, approved him to, like, he just, like, that's why when he visited him, like, after that, like, Johnny didn't need the corpse part in him anymore to, like, I think he, like, earned it. You know what I mean? I think that's what that was supposed to represent to me. I don't know if it's ever actually addressed, but, like, I think that Johnny just, like, finally earned his stand, you know? Like, he is the kind of person, like, maybe when we first met him, he wasn't. He didn't have a purpose. He wasn't necessarily, like, in a really good place, and he wasn't being a very good person maybe necessarily, but now he has found a purpose, and he is the kind of person. So it's like the same principle as the arrow, you know, like the devil's palm was like that too. If you have that potential, then it will just manifest in you. And now he does. So I don't know. if that's right or not. But anyway, so he's definitely like, his legs are healing up. So I don't know. I'm hoping this will end with like he gets the healing he was after, but I could also see the healing being like the inner healing that, he didn't, that he knew he needed, but like it wasn't the one he was after. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he's already just come so far. So yeah, so cool ability, really freaky. We know what's happening now. So now that we know what's happening, all that's left to do is to try and get around it, right? And how the heck do you do that? So that leads me to our last chapter of the day, chapter 70. We start off with an example of D4C's power using a sponge. And I'd like to note at this point that even the sponge is menacing. Like in JoJo's, even a sponge can menace at you. Do you remember at the beginning of Stardust Crusaders, they had like menacing coming from like the kitchen when Abdul was like approaching? And it's because Holly was sick or something. Yeah, it was because Holly was sick. But like, I remember thinking just like, it would not surprise. He saw like a spoon on the ground or something. It was menacing. I'm like, you know what? A menacing utensil, I would absolutely buy it. I would absolutely buy it. In JoJo's, anything can be menacing. So the sponge is menacing. So you see the two intersect. Their gaps overlap with each other and they fully become one. So, cut to what's really going on right now. Dio is still cut in half, and there are two of him. Wekapipo throws a ball to try and help him. And Valentine explains that two of a person can't exist in one world except for himself, like, except for Valentine because of his stand. So, Dio's thinking that if this world is just like the other world, they should be here soon. And I'm like, who's they? So Valentine looks behind him, and at the sewer grate is starting to open, and dinos bust through. So that's the they that we were waiting for. And then we see Johnny's hand come up through the drain and start shooting Tusk at Valentine. So Dio tells his dinos, good job for bringing him. So I'm like, holy crap, they actually work together. Dio even yells his name. And it's absolutely wild to me to think of any representation of Dio and Jonathan just like working together this way. And I gotta tell you, it made me so happy. I was so happy at this part. This was the high on the roller coaster, you guys. This was it. This was like Diego's fights finally happening. He's becoming a bro. He's working with Johnny. Yeah, his intentions might not be super pure and everything. Like maybe he's self-serving. Maybe he just wants to get this done for his own agenda. But at the end of the day, he brought Johnny in here to help wreck Valentine. Technically, they are working together. And I was just like, my heart soared. My heart soared at this. But what soars must inevitably plummet. I'd like you to keep that in mind. So the dinos guided him through the sewers, and the left eye, is just now laying here on the ground. So Buffy is back. Valentine comments about Johnny's legs again. Like, they're definitely pushing the thing about the legs, you guys. Like, it's gonna be important. How you doing back there, bub? Oh, she's just laying down. So Johnny shoots the crap out of Valentine, and he is wrecked. He finally collapses between a door and like the outside wall of the building. And Wekapipo's like, you did it! But Dio says, no, he just returned and the eye is gone, so he must have taken it with him. So the original Valentine took the eye back and got back to the other world unharmed, but he can use copies of himself to basically sacrifice them while he gets away. And Dio says, okay, this is my chance. I have to get back there somehow. And he's thinking that each time Valentine disappeared and reappeared, it was from between two objects, right? Like even just now we saw him, he was between the door and the building. So he sees that Dio sees that the him of this world is now dead, and he starts writing in the sand for Wekapipo to pull his legs. So Wekapipo sees it in like the neighboring world and is like, what? Is he alive somewhere? So Dio's like, come here, Wekapipo. I know the secret of his stand. I know how to get out of here, and I'm gonna tell you, just come a little bit closer. And they're like, they're really building this up, you guys. Like, something's gonna happen. So he grabs Wekapipo's leg, pulls him down, tells him, I should really thank you. I understand his ability now. I'm sorry. I'm glad I joined up with you. And we see Wekapipo starts to merge with the flag. And Dio says, now I'm the only one who understands. Apparently he was like caught between. He was like stuck or something. So now Dio's back, but there are 2 Wekapipos. So he pulled Wekapipo through. And now the 2 Wekapipos start to merge and explode. And Wekapipo and the 2 orange steel balls are like merging into each other and getting totally wrecked. And Dio says, thank you again and goodbye to Wekapipo. And Dio says he thinks of this is the reason why Wekapipo came to this country. And I'm like, oh. He just straight up sacrificed Wekapipo. And even though he seems somewhat apologetic about it, like, he seems a little bit more, I don't know, compared to, like original universe Dio. He's being a little bit less evil about it. But at the same time, he also just said, like, I'd like to think that you were just here for this moment to sacrifice yourself for me. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds more like Dio. Just, like, the total unbridled ego of this man. So all the fragments of Wekapipo bust apart and explode, and we see him thinking of Lucy, his sister, Gyro, and Gyro's dad one last time. And now I wonder if that thing that he was thinking earlier about, like, you know, he's almost kind of saying, like, I just kind of want to, like, have done good where I can. I want to serve where I can, you know? I wonder if that was from, like, this moment where he's just about to bust apart and he's thinking of all this. I'm just so sad about it because, oh, all right. So we see the final pieces of, like, his eyes as they just vanish and Dio just turns away. So Dio's thinking about the whole corpse being taken. Like, Dio just moves on. Like, we spend, like, 2 seconds on poor Wekapipo and we just move on. So Dio's thinking about the whole corpse being taken, but he noticed in the neighboring world that there was only 1 copy of the left eye. He says there must be numerous parallel worlds, which is funny because we kind of introduced, like, the idea of, like, alternate worlds and, like, universes and everything in part 6. So I'm like, wow, not only did Araki actually, like, use that to have part 7 in a totally different universe, but we're still kind of, like, using the idea of, like, a multiverse kind of, and in this story. So it was a very important thing to establish. So, yeah. So he says there must be numerous parallel worlds, and if Valentine gets attacked, he can just go change places with himself from another world, which is what we saw him do when Lucy got him so bad at first. And then he gets between the chair and the floor, and next thing we know, he's back and he's fine. So basically, he's just like, he's switching out. I was trying so hard to figure out, like, what that could be. And that's what it is. He's switching out with other copies of himself. But Dio notices there's only 1 eye, which means the corpse belongs only to this world, like the main world that we're in. Most likely the race is being run over something else in other worlds. Like, for example, he saw that the Valentine in the other world had a diamond. So he figures, oh, in the neighboring world, they must be having the steel ball run to go find diamonds. But the corpse is, like, native to this world. This proves, he says, that the corpse is a miracle and that this world is where everything is based. Like, this is the main world that they're in. He says that means that that's probably also where the weak point in Valentine's ability is. And he says that once he's tested his theory, he'll beat Valentine and the winds of change will blow back at him, Dio. And I'm just like, ugh. Diego, I'm sorry I ever fell in love with you. He's being so Dio right now. And just him, like, selling out Wekapipo when just minutes earlier we had him working with Johnny. Oh, so sad. So, meanwhile, Gyro sees the sewer opening and the blood on it. And he says, now I'm not going to follow Dio or Valentine. I'm going to look for Johnny because he definitely saw something. Like, Johnny's definitely going to be able to tell me what the heck is going on here. Finn to chapter 70, you guys. And that is it. That is our batch for today. I think all the chapters are really good and they hit really hard in their own ways. It was cool kind of seeing like the buildup of like how we were kind of being shown little clues about like what was really going on, like one chapter at a time. And just ultimately leading up to finding out the secret of Valentine's stand ability. And again, I gotta say, it's a really, really cool one. So now we have a lot more info on it. After that last chapter, I feel like they really clarify a lot. Like, this is the main world, the corpse is only in this world. Because here's the thing, if the corpse was in other worlds, Valentine could just go hop between the other worlds and get all the parts. Like, it wouldn't even be a thing. Like, but it's native only to this world, which shows how special it is. Like, he mentions it's a miracle, and that this world is like, must be like the main one. So yeah, so we have that much now. Again, I think it's really cool that we're investigating the idea of like parallel worlds and everything. We dealt with that. We dealt with like the whole, like, we dealt with that in part 6, and we know that hopefully everyone's seen part 6 here. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a spoiler, I'm sorry. But hopefully you've all seen part 6. And I just find it really interesting that like we would still be dealing with that here. It's a really cool ability. It's very different from the other time abilities we've had, because it's literally kind of going to like other parts of the multiverse and like borrowing. Now, I'll tell you one thing I did that stood out to me a lot from everything we saw from Valentine here, okay? Every time we see Valentine, and I was almost kind of afraid to say this at first, because I'm like, this might seem like a hot take, and I've not seen how this stand is going to evolve or how his use of it is going to evolve, but my first impression was like, he's really not all that good at actual fighting. Like, if you look at it, Valentine's not trying to like avoid getting wrecked. He's not really like fighting. It's not a big strategy thing for him. He's not really like, he can just kind of rely on his stand and just that ultimate cheat code of being able to like swap himself out. Which I gotta say, I get it. I get why you would allow yourself to be a little bit lazy in that case, because your power's so OP. But that already is showing me like a little bit of a caveat, perhaps, in like the way that he deals with his ability. Because if there's one thing we know about JoJo's, it's like, it's all how you use it. You know, it's all like, you can have a stand that's not that OP, but if you know how to use it properly, you could do a whole lot, you know? Like, and I'm not saying Valentine's not smart, I'm like sure that he is, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more strategy from him later, but it's already showing me a little bit of a weakness and the way that he uses his ability, that like, he doesn't seem to be a very good fighter, you know? Like, he's not, his defending himself isn't that good, his offense isn't that good. He's using it like he's using a gun and everything. Like, he basically is relying very heavily on just this whole world swapping thing. So if we could just find a way to sort of, it's not like he has all his bases covered, let's put it that way, you know? Like, I feel like by the end, he probably will. So I'm sure, you know, we will see a lot of growth from him over the next, gosh, we only have like 25 chapters left. Isn't that wild? We have 25 chapters left. That's kind of crazy. We covered a lot of ground, but yeah, so, yeah, that was like my initial impression is like, it's OP, but just like in watching the way that he uses it, he's really not even trying to like avoid getting attacked or anything. Like, he's not super clever, or like, or at least he's not showing it at this time. I'm not saying he's not, but he's not really acting on, which, you know, you wouldn't have to until you ran into other stand users. You would just be like using this ability, and like, it wouldn't matter if you could defend yourself or strategize or any of that. Now that he's going to be going up against people like Gyro and Johnny and Dio and everything, he is most definitely going to have to step up his game, because that's not going to fly. Like, they're going to outthink that really freaking quickly, and they can also take like 1,000,000 bullets and not die, so he's really going to have to up his game. We lost Wekapipo in this one. I need to stop losing Joe Bros because like we're not even like it's so sad because they're like traveling Joe Bros. You know what I mean? Like they're not even like in the main crew. Like its main crew is mostly just Johnny and Gyro. But like all the ones that have kind of come in and been like cool to us and bros and everything, like Mount Tim and Wekapipo, it's like they're just getting taken out. And so I'm really sad that he didn't get to see his sister again. I was really hoping maybe this would end with him getting back to reunite with his sister. So that bummed me out a lot. And it bummed me out most of all that Dio would do that. He would just straight up sacrifice. And I was so happy to see him working with Johnny. I'm like, okay, maybe at the very least he will see the benefit of like an alliance in his favor, even if he's not doing it because they're friends or whatever. And I think like to a degree he'll do that, but the first chance he gets to do something to serve himself that maybe has to sacrifice somebody else, he doesn't care. They're out of there. And so I was so disappointed in him. Like I feel like that's a big turning point because up to this point I'm like, yeah, he sided with Valentine, which was bad, and yeah, he's doing this and that, which is bad, but like I feel like there was nothing really that definitively like pushed him over the line of like, you are a bad person. You're being a bad person right now. And this was it. This was the thing that kind of like pushed it over the line for me, and I'm like, oh. Sorry I ever let myself fall for him, you guys. I don't know what I was thinking. What was I really honestly thinking? That like anyone who was in any part of any universe, Dio. What I was my ultimate moment of I think I can fix him. Like I have no defense for myself. But yeah. So meanwhile, like Johnny, I don't know if he has put any of this together yet. Gyro is still like he's way behind on all this. He doesn't even know like what's going. I'm sure he'll put it together too. But like at this point in time, the only one who really knows what's going on is Dio, which might help Dio. It's really not going to be good for anyone else. But you know, I was worried about Dio earlier, and I'm like, okay, well now that he's figured it out, he is so sharp. Like Dio is so, I'm sorry, I did shake my camera that time. He is so freaking sharp in this that I'm just like, okay, well, you know, now he actually does have a shot against Valentine. And so like maybe this will help him stay alive a little bit longer, you know, like because we know that Valentine's just intending to take him out basically once he's done using him, which now he has the eye, you know. Yeah, so then we ended with him having the eye. I don't think Dio ever got the eye back. I think the last one, what was the last thing we saw? I know it was on the ground, and then I think he took it. Yeah, he noticed in the neighboring world there was only one copy of his left eye. Did he actually get, I think Valentine got the eye. So he's got the whole corpse now. Is that right? I feel like if there had been a point where Dio got the eye back, I would have stated that. So does Dio not have a stand now? Was his stand not coming from... I think his stand was coming from the eye. As well. Okay, so never mind. So maybe he's like royally cooked. Because if he doesn't have a stand, and he's planning on going up against, I don't know. Or maybe he like earned his stand like Johnny did. I don't know. I have no idea at this point. Now I have more questions. But yeah, I'm pretty sure... where are we here with the eye? Yeah, the original Valentine took the eye back and got back to the other world unharmed. He can use copies of himself to basically sacrifice them while he gets away. This is my chance, blah, 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 blah. So he managed to get out of that world, but he did not get the eye back. So oh my God. I actually just realized that like, I don't think he has a stand now. Unless it's like, we're just going by Johnny rules, but like he has it anyway now. Like he spent enough time with the eye that he just has it and just don't worry about it, you know? Like, I don't know, maybe it's like that, who knows? But yeah, because Johnny still has a stand. He doesn't have any corpse parts. But Johnny's undergone like a big transformation and been visited by Jesus, you know? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, so Dio's just really being Dio right now, and I'm bummed. I'm bummed about Wekapipo, but I'm really, really intrigued, and I'm glad that we finally got to see all the details of D4C. Of course, I'm sure there's going to be lots of other ways that it can be used that are going to be really cool to see, and I'm sure it'll have some kind of, like, final evolution, because I feel like they typically do have, like, I mean, Zawoldo was just kind of just, I won't really say it evolved, but you still might not have like a final form. It might not be like an act thing where it's like Act 3 or Act 2 of D4C, but like I'm sure we'll be doing something new with it. You know what I mean? So yeah, guys, this is a really good batch. Again, I love how they just kind of built up like from everyone's perspective what was going on. And we started out with Gyro wrecking Disco, which was also really fun. But yeah, through the whole thing, we're just kind of like being led by the nose to find out how D4C really works, and it's a pretty cool stand. I think it fits really well with the other, like, the Hall of Fame of JoJo villains and their abilities and everything. I think it's like, what is there left? What is there left to do with time? Because we have, like, skip time, we have, like, rewind time, we have go forward in time, you know, like, what more do we do? And this was really cool, you know, just like hopping between times, basically. He's kind of like a time hopper. I feel like I've seen that in like a few other things too, where like people are hopping between the multiverse to like do something, get something, achieve something. I saw a movie. I won't say what the movie is because I don't know, it's been out for a few years. I don't think it would spoil anybody, but it is a Marvel movie, so I don't want to say it because not everyone's seen all the Marvel movies, and I don't know. I just don't want to be responsible for spoiling somebody. But anyway, so we are using both like time ability and the multiverse, which was something we kind of introduced at the end of part 6, that like we had other universes. There are other like parallel timeline. I guess maybe we call it like parallel timelines. They're calling it like neighboring worlds here. I think whatever you want to call it, I think we all pretty much get like the gist of it. It is like a little bit, when you try to dissect it, I'm still kind of like at that King Crimson spot where I'm like, if you had to ask me like exact details about it, I'd probably like falter a little bit, but like I get the gist of it. And I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, so that was my big takeaway, is like cool stand, cool build up to it, sucks about Wekapipo, sucks about Dio, and Valentine kind of needs to step up his game, I think, you know? I mean, it kind of looked to me like he was just kind of relying on his stand a lot. I don't mean to judge, but actually I do mean to judge because he's kind of, oh my God, you know what's so funny? I literally just had a dream last night where like I was getting ready for something and like somebody was doing my hair and they're like, oh, I'm going to curl your hair for you. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. I love curling my hair. And when they got done, it was the Valentine hairdo. It was like the little curls at the bottom. And I'm like, why did you make me up like President Valentine? Why would you do that? And of course, the person who was doing it didn't know at all what I was talking about. But I'm like, you literally just gave me his hairstyle. What have you done? So I'm going to leave you on that, okay? I'm going to leave you with, please nobody picture me with the hairstyle. It's actually not a bad hairstyle. If we're being, like, I don't like him at all as a person. I think what he did to Lucy was terrible. I'm not like him as a person. But I will say, like, the hair is not bad. Like, as hair goes, it's not the worst hair. All right, guys, what a batch. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, next time we're going to be doing 6 chapters, so that's, whew, I'm going to need some water here for that or something. I don't know. Good thing I'm just, like, full of hot air, you know? Going to be doing a lot of talking that day. So, I have not read them yet, by the way, so I have no idea what's coming. I just know that there's a big fight coming, and it will be resolved in 76, so it will be easier to do 71 through 76. So, all right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed reading, hearing, watching, reading, looking along with me. I think it's really going to be ramped up to like 11 from here on out, maybe even higher, because we're in the last 25 chapters. So it kind of feels like it's going to be anything goes. It's starting to feel a little bit scary. We got like the main villain in a stand now. So I'm definitely going to need your help, support, love, all that for the foreseeable future. So please be sure to join me next time and we will read it together. Bye for now, guys.